and welcome to What's Brewing, a Faith Unfiltered series where we explore the question, what is mission and why does it matter? I'm your host, Robin Linkhart, and I'm here today with Waterloo-Cedar Falls Community of Christ pastors Pam Argotzinger, Susan McFarland, and Beth Sent. They are here to talk about their congregation's journey of discernment and where the Holy Spirit led them as they took each next faithful step, bringing them to where they are today. Welcome, Pam, Susan, and Beth, and thank you so much for making time to chat with us today.
Hello. Thank you.
Hi. Thanks for having us, Robin.
Well, let's take just a few minutes now for introduction. So I'd like you to tell a little bit about you and your life now, where you live, and just the basics of who you are today.
Hi, I'm Susan McFarland, and I live in Cedar Falls, Iowa. And I'm on a journey with two good friends and a lot of congregation members. And it has been a good walkthrough. I was a middle school and elementary music teacher. I graduated from Graceland College in 1969. I married my Graceland sweetheart, and we have two boys and families. Travis is in Columbia, Missouri, and he is a collaborative pianist for the Conservatory for Musical Theater at Stevens College. He's a busy guy. And our eldest son, Matt, both boys have lots of Graceland friends, and it's fun when I run into some of their friends, and it happened on our new property when we were looking at it. So it's just always good to have those connections. Matt is in the Twin Cities and is at a charter school for the arts as the director, and his wife, Molly Kleinfelter, takes care of the home and the kids, and she's also an adjunct voice instructor at Gustavus Adolphus College. The kids are very busy. Fiona is 13, I think, and Rogan is 8, and they are the love of our lives as young people. So I think that's about all you need to know about me.
Thank you, Susan. Beth.
My name is Beth Sent. I live about 30 miles southwest of Cedar Falls in a little town called Rhinebeck. I attend the Waterloo-Cedar Falls congregation, though, and am one of the 3 pastors currently. I grew up in the church. So my grandfather was a member and pastor, I'm sure, of the Wabash, Canada congregation. My dad, Nelson Batter, was under appointment for many years, so we got to move several times. And I am retired from teaching business. I taught business for a total of 38 years, but 36 of those were at the community college here. I met my husband teaching, and we have one son, Wes, a daughter-in-law, Chelsea, and a 2-year-old granddaughter, Lena, and they live in Cedar Falls also. They have a business here, and Chelsea keeps busy with working her job and keeping up the household.
Thank you, Beth. Pam.
I'm Pam Argotzinger, and I've lived in Iowa ever since I graduated from Graceland University, but my blood still runs Pacific Northwest because I was raised in Seattle, and that's where my family still lives, and so I get out there often. But I met my husband here in Cedar Falls at church. And Lynn and I have been married for almost 43 years. And we have 3 children between the two of us. And so we have Cameron, who lives in Atlanta and with his wife and 2 children, and Blake, who lives in Corvallis, Oregon, with his 2 children, and Brooke Schlinker, who lives in the Seattle area with her husband and daughter. We have 2 other boys who live in Chicago and their families, and we have many grandchildren. And so our family and our life is rich with family. Lynn and I have stayed here in Cedar Falls, even though everyone left us, and our life is filled with neighbors, with our congregation, with acquaintances, and former students. Lynn was a junior high school principal, and I taught elementary school for many years. And I now teach as an adjunct at the University of Northern Iowa. And that it keeps us very busy working with my 2 colleagues here, Susan and Beth. And just a fun fact, Beth and my moms were roommates at Graceland.
Wow.
So, those Graceland ties run deep.
Well, it's great to know a little bit about you before you begin to tell us your amazing story, your journey of discernment. So how did that begin?
Well, I'll start. I don't know why we all, I suppose this time in our lives, we say before the pandemic and after the pandemic, and because that was really a significant factor in the events that have taken place in our congregation. But a couple of years before the pandemic, we started recognizing that we heard the call of World Church, really, to think about what we were doing and what we were doing inside our walls of the church and outside the walls. And so we started following the videos on discernment, and started to be very intentional about discerning who we were and what we were being called to do. And so we engaged in that for several months, and then I'm not sure we got very far, even though we kept meeting. We would talk, and we just weren't getting down the road. And then the pandemic occurred, and so during the pandemic, we wanted to continue. It was on all of our minds, but knowing how to get to a place where we could talk about actionable changes was kind of outside of our reach at that moment in time. And so during the pandemic, we continued to, I was not part of the pastor's team at that point in time. I was part of the leadership team, but we immediately scrambled and decided we would meet on Sunday mornings on Zoom, and that we would just have fellowship. And so we would catch up, see how everyone was doing. And so during that time, that was basically what we did. We started to have maybe share the prayer for peace together, or share a short worship together. And that, we worked within those boundaries of a very short time together, but staying in touch.
Yeah.
During that time, we lost some very beloved members to COVID. And so that was hard, as I know it was for many people.
And some of those happened at the beginning of COVID. And I think that's why we thought it was so important to do the Zoom and have fellowship, because we did have older members who knew how to get on the computer, could get on Zoom. And so we kept in touch with them, and now, we knew what was happening with their health, and then, as Pam said, we decided we needed to put some worship elements in. And at that time, it felt like we were in competition with a lot of other congregations who were doing the same thing. And, some people might have had ties with Lamoni congregation. And so they would tune in there. And then trying to juggle the times, when can we get everybody on? But we did recognize that we had members who still needed that touch, even though it was virtual, they still needed that. And so we tried to keep that up while we could. I would say that as far as discernment went, it kind of got put on the back burner so that we could focus on the members that we did have and keep in touch that way. We did have a sewing group that could not meet person to person, but we were able to do some things at home and take care of each other that way. I can even remember one of our sister congregations, a member had a fire at her house, and so we all kind of scrambled together and got some things to send to the Clear Lake area so that they knew that we were thinking of them. So that was kind of at a distance. That's aside from our congregation, but still, we wanted to let everybody know that we're still here and
And
keep
then
in touch.
toward the end, when we were all waiting for that okay to go back to meeting in person, we talked about what that might look like. And we still were searching for what that might look like when we came all back together, but we knew we wanted to be together. And so one day we got the word and plans were made as to how to get the building sanitized and what practices we would have. And so then that's where I will hand it off to someone else, Beth, I think, as to what happened after we started coming back together.
Well, as I said, we did the Zoom as much as we could. When we decided to come back together, it was to clean the top of the church. And so we donned our masks and we got together at the church, and it was kind of funny because couples would go off into different directions, and do that part of the church and, cleaning off all the hymnals and the pews and things that we used for fellowship and whatnot. So we did that, and then we felt that we were ready to come back. So we did come back, had some nice services, but it seemed like every other service, it's like, oh, we can't have a service today because so-and-so has COVID. So then we were careful and got back on Zoom and tried to meet that way. During that time, I think some of us started thinking about where our congregation would be going in the future, because we felt that we lost some members who were good contributors to our funds and our worships, and we weren't quite sure what it would look like when we came back. And even though we did try to come back as a group, some people chose not to because they thought it was too soon. But I think at that time then several people started talking, and we would have our business meetings. What's this going to look like for us in another year or two? So I think all of what's leading up to where we are now started probably during that time when we lost some of our members and to death, or they just didn't feel comfortable coming back.
So when was it during this time where the three of you became the pastorship, the P3 as you call it?
So that was just this beginning of this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was the P3. But things started happening before that. We started to meet in the evenings and talk about what we thought we saw ourselves doing in the future. And we knew we wanted to stay together as a congregation, but there were other things that started to creep in. How are our finances, and what about maintenance for the building, and things like that.
Okay. We started meeting every Wednesday night, and then sometimes to catch people who weren't able to come on Wednesday night, we did some Sunday morning conversations. Emphasis was very strong on the
Mission.
the mission initiatives and the
Vision.
enduring principles, and that helped be our foundation. Pam was extremely talented in getting us to share what we had on our hearts. And we had all these posters with ideas, and they were circled, and it was a very enlightening experience. But we wouldn't have been able to do it if we didn't have the leadership and say, today, this is what we're going to talk about. And we had nice attendance, even though the numbers are low or lower. And we continued on, and we discovered some things about ourselves and how we can make a difference where we've been planted.
So in the midst of this, we did make the decision to sell our property. And that was part of our recognizing the reality of where we were, and also our capacity. And within talking about vision, we had to start reframing our thinking and saying that we really had to advocate for ourselves, that we were not another congregation that was closing. We were selling, but we had the vision for relocating. And that was such a powerful experience, because selling our property it still is a heartbreaking experience. The building itself was built by many of us that were part of the congregation back in 1986. And it was a beautiful piece of property. We had a lovely labyrinth on the property that had been dedicated to, built as a memorial to one of our very beloved members of the congregation. We had memories there. We had lovely experiences there, young peacemakers, weddings, all of the things that make it's your home. And so that was such a painful process for us to have to make that decision. But when we had the vision that, we are being called somewhere, because we are not just a lovely building, and we're not this lovely piece of land. We need to be in a place where we're in the midst of community. And a lot of our conversation then in our vision work was determining who is our community. And, sometimes you just think, well, our friends who come to church with us, and we knew we had to push side of that. And so we are near the University of Northern Iowa, and we recognize that we often have students from other congregations, Community of Christ students who are there at UNI, that we want to be able to offer a church home to them. And we also knew that we wanted neighbors. We needed to be where we had people who we could just walk out the door and invite to that sewing group or to young peacemakers, and not have to advertise and hope that somebody saw our advertisement, but instead be where mission could happen as part of our neighboring and as part of us being a member of community. And so in that conversation, that vision, we realized we needed to put some, when looking for a new location, since we were not closing, we were relocating. And we practiced changing our language when we would go into the mission center or even talk to each other. That when the building sold, we started saying, when we relocate. And, you know, when you change your language, you change your lens. And we did that. And it's just been a powerful journey. But we did decide that we needed to look for property that would allow us to have that opportunity. And so my husband, Lynn, he likes looking at opportunities. And he remembered that we had a credit union that had just closed, and it was right on the edge of a neighborhood. It was right on the edge of campus. And so he went to them and said, "What are you going to do with that building?" It wasn't on the market. And they said, "Well, we're going to sell it eventually." And he talked to them. And so we went through the process, a very long process, waiting for our building to sell, so then we could put an offer on this building. And so we now own a credit union building that's in a wonderful location.
So tell us a little bit about how your discernment journey informed you as you looked at that particular building. What were some of the markers you were looking for around? And I'm mindful that you were very intentional in the process of selecting the building and kind of checking things out before you even made an offer. So tell us how that discernment journey really informed that.
Well, when we were meeting on Wednesday nights, we came up with a vision. And part of that vision, like Pam said, was to be closer to the university, to be in a neighborhood. We had a beautiful piece of land at the other place. And Lynn helped find that too. But I think at the time, that's probably all that was there was the church. And now there are other things that have come in. But, you know, we even had a farmer farming the piece of land that we didn't have our building on. So that, you know, that was a little bit of income. And we didn't have to try to keep the weeds down. But we came up with that vision knowing that we had those students that we wanted to be closer to. Could they jump in a car and drive to where we were located? They probably could have, but, you know, university students are struggling with finances, sometimes even food. And we did not want to put that extra burden on them. And I think that's part of our thinking was that we can relocate to be closer to them. We wanted to be in a neighborhood, so that gives us the opportunity to meet with those people, invite their families to come. We want to start up young peacemakers again, and we know that in this day and age, we need a lot of that peacemaking initiative. So we're hoping that, you know, by being there, it will help us maybe grow at least let us be present for other people when they need it.
I'm also aware that some of the considerations, because you had a really nice property before, it was expansive and it required a lot of maintenance
Yes.
and cost as well. How did you put parameters on what you call your capacity as you moved into a new place? And how has that served you, or how has it been difficult to remind yourselves?
Snow removal and lawn.
Mhm.
I'm kind of joking, but we needed a parking lot that was not falling apart, but it was very accessible to the building. One that was big enough, but not too big, because we paid a lot of our income went toward snow removal and lawn care. And so we did know that we needed a piece of property that was manageable, that it was not so big that all of our energy and resources went into maintaining the building. And because we knew that wasn't where our limited energy needed to go. And, even in that first discernment process before the pandemic, we would talk about the fact that we recognized that our congregation was starting to get smaller. We're in an area where people come and go. They'll go have jobs and then they'll leave the area. And so, but we said, right now, all of our energy is going into planning services for ourselves and maintaining the building. And we recognized that we had to re-envision, just what our worship experiences looked like, where our energy was going, and if that was what we really wanted, and if that seemed to be what we were being called to do. And so when we got to the place where we recognized we had to give up this big building so that we could actually respond to that call, I think that was a realization that had been coming along for a long time. And when we started into our vision, and Susan's just very, very gracious about talking about my leadership on this, but one piece was that we had gone through the transformation work with Ron Harmon, Larry McGuire, Marvin Rice, and they helped us really go through this process of examining ourselves and learning deeply about what it means to be in mission. And that was a vibrant time for our congregation. And all of a sudden, when we were at this place of what do we do? All of that, we pulled out those notes and said, where have we strayed or just forgotten or kind of maintained and didn't really keep acting upon that? Where did we feel like, well, we can't do that anymore because we're not very big, or we can't do that anymore because we're too old, and so we pulled that out. And it was just like it all came alive for us again. And we were able to put it into the context of where we are now, what our capacity is, but we still were able to draw upon those rich experiences of Tony and Charmaine coming in and helping us remember what is our story, what is it that we want to share, and so many other leaders that invested in us. And I think that was part of the conversation that we had that was a hard conversation. And we said, we are making an intentional decision to be open in this community because of all of that background and we refreshed our memory and we had deep conversations and we said, we believe that we have something to offer that is not being offered in this community, and that we have an important voice here, and that we cannot let that presence not be here anymore. It is too critical. Our welcoming, our efforts towards peace, and just who we were. And so, that fire burns bright when you have that belief about the importance of being in here in the community. And I would say that was a big part of knowing what to talk about next.
Yeah, it's really exciting to hear your story and to hear how the Holy Spirit has been at work in, through, and amongst you as a congregation, friends and members. And we also realize that there are practical challenges along the way. So as you're preparing to sell a building and buy a building, and you needed to find a space to be able to continue to gather. So tell us, because you're kind of in between point now, and before we jump in to all the new possibilities resident in your new place, tell us how you built that bridge to sustain the congregation as far as having a space between the sale and the purchase.
Lynn again helped us out. And the Argot Singer's daughter-in-law was a member of the United Congregational Church of Christ. That's right. And UCC. So we've been in touch with them, and we do activities with them. We have community meals that we participate in, and Brittany's dad is part of that group, and he's part of that church. And so Lynn put out the feelers. Do you have space? Because they are a dwindling congregation, and they are about ready to sell their church also. But they were very open to let us come and use a couple of their rooms for worship and for the sewist group. So we have outreach that we like to do, and we wanted to keep that up. So they have been very gracious, letting us be there to have our worship services Sunday morning and meetings on Wednesdays and sewing on Mondays. So we get to do a lot of that. So, working together with other churches was already something that we did, and we had those connections.
That's great. I love it when we partner across the aisle, so to speak. So I had the wonderful opportunity to tour all these spaces that Pam and Beth and Susan are talking about. And so I want you to take us into this new chapter and talk about your new place and the vision of mission and ministry that's just coming alive as you so talk about how you're adjusting the building to meet your needs, and anything that you would like our listeners to hear about this amazing next step.
Well, we realize the size of our new property is very small, but we need to start there and offer things in the neighborhood. And we have a little free pantry that Beth's son and husband and the congregation have worked together for a few years trying to get it going, and we are going. Every time we go by, there's stuff that's been taken, and so we put more stuff in to hopefully help some of the students who live around there to not be hungry, and so that they know someone cares. We hope also to have one on our new property when the remodel is done. So, we talk and we try to plan the best that we can. And hopefully, as the building is remodeled and we are in it, people will want to know what's going on in that little building. And we're ready to welcome them and to serve them if it be necessary.
What are some of the key factors as you remodel, redesign the building?
So it was a credit union, and prior to that, it was a preschool, and so we do know that we've wanted a kitchen because we love to cook and to serve. We've talked about having breakfast at a local park on a Sunday morning, maybe before church, and who knows, maybe have a service there too. So the kitchen is very important to us. We needed the space for worship. We wanted to keep a couple rooms for classrooms. Let's see, a meeting room, and of course a sewing room. Those things are important to us. We do take our outreach seriously. So, looking at what we have for the bones of the church and how we can repurpose the different rooms or spaces, how we can make our church more accessible, although, being on one level, there are no steps, so that's a plus. But we also have a member of our church who's an architect, and we asked for his advice, and he is willingly giving that advice freely and for little cost to us. So we're coming up with plans. We're getting input from the congregation on what's important to them. What else?
Yeah. And I think in that conversation, and he's been really wonderful to listen to what we want. And I think sometimes we're finding ourselves at this point between, are we trying to recreate the old building in this smaller space, or are we truly looking at this with fresh eyes and saying, we are changed? We are not the same congregation because we see our work. I think we always saw our work as reaching out, but we are now in a place where it's boots on the ground and it's really going to happen. We have neighbors that walk by and want to hear our story, mm-hmm. and we better be ready to tell that story. Mm-hmm. And so we've started studying the sharing and community of Christ again. We had definitely studied it before, but boy, does it are these fresh eyes on this when you think about how am I going to talk about the name, who are we as community of Christ? What do we believe? And knowing that isn't just if I choose to tell a friend that I happen to be talking to, or I'm here in front of our building and I've invited them to a campfire and I have to be ready to to share why we decided to stay here. And we have, now that we know that we don't just go to church here, but we intentionally are here in this community because we are going to we want you to be part of a wonderful, welcoming community that we think is going to enhance your life. And that totally changes who we are, what we're about, and why we're doing this. And so, I think when we look at our rooms, we say, what is it that in our capacity that we're able to do?
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that we hope as we bring new people in, they are going to have gifts that look different than ours. And so we want to make sure there's that flexibility of use of the space, but also that openness to have space for whatever comes our way. And so, being able to talk about a sanctuary that's flexible. And we got a little bit of a taste of that when we sold all of our pews at our other church and at the big church. And Lynn again got on Facebook Marketplace, and we found a church up in Minnesota that came and loaded up the pews and took them. And all of a sudden we looked at our big sanctuary and we said, we can put our chairs in a circle now. And that happens to be the way we have our worship area set up at the UCC church. And sometimes you find yourself in a place that you didn't anticipate or plan, but it opens doors that are just amazing. Yes. And so, I know we'd like to start Young Peacemakers again, and Peacemaker families, open it up to the entire family. We have a couple members who would like to have a music night and put a band together, or just have a drop-in. You don't have to be practicing for Sunday. It can be just, let's play some music. We want a place where our UNI students can feel free to drop in and just be if they need a space, and our SOAS. And, those are some of the first steps, I think, that we see as soon as we get it remodeled. But we've had 2 campfires in the parking lot, and that has been a lovely experience for our members.
Yeah, I got to attend one last night, and it's just very, it kind of took me by surprise, because we are in the city and we are a short walk from a huge campus, and there's still a very quaint neighborhood right across the street. And your property borders, tell us about that property that's protected, that's borders.
You know most about it.
Well, it's the UNI biological reserve. And so there are trails through it, but it's prairie, and it is, it backs up to then once you get toward campus, and we're just one building away from being on campus, and they have the CEEE, which is all about conservation and so many events that focus on taking care of the planet, which is, again, we said, what a perfect connection for us to be in that space. And so, we sit there and we look one way, and there's the prairie, and we hear the animals, and we hear the birds, and then we hear University Avenue that's 2 blocks over, and you hear the sirens or cars, and then you look the other way and see the university, and then you look this way and you see the neighborhood. And when we're there during the day and even in the evening, people walking and biking, and university students parking in our parking lot. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
And we know we're in the right place.
Yes.
We know we have some cosmetic changes, so there will not be a drive-up communion or evangelist blessing.
The drive-up window.
The drive-up window from the bank. But we're looking forward to putting our touch on it.
Well, it's a beautiful story, and I'd like to ask you, what have you learned during this experience?
I've learned that teamwork is the best. With the three of us, we all have different ideas, but we also have each other to say, okay, wait a minute, let's look at it this way. Or what do you think about that? And so being a team and getting along, trying to figure out things that are best for our congregation, I think that's one of the biggest things for me, is to have a team that works together.
Susan, what about you?
Well, kind of the same ideas, especially the working together and wanting to be together and respecting one another. And just because so-and-so said it doesn't mean that it's right, but doesn't mean that it's wrong either. So we listen and we step out with faith.
Pam?
I think that, again, when we value each other's thinking and lean into each other as needed, it also helps us remember that I guess it makes us so open to the ideas of other people in the congregation and really seeing what are the needs, but what are the gifts and the ways that people are able to give. And everybody makes us who we are. And so when we see the strengths of each other and the strengths of the people in our congregation, then I learned this from Lynn as a coach, that you take all of your players and you identify their strengths. And when you focus on a strength and build that, then the team comes together, and so do other areas in that person's development as an athlete or as a thinker or just as a team member. I think we've also really grown in communication and realizing communication is kind. It allows access to everyone feeling that they are a viable part of the congregation, and making sure that, and so when we communicate, we don't make any communication unless all of us have crafted that email together and we know what we're putting out. And so valuing that among ourselves has been important, and it also has been important for letting the members of the congregation know where they have, how they're valued, and where they have opportunity for ownership and expression of their gifts.
That's beautiful. So as you look back from this place on the journey, what do you know now that you wish you had known when you very first started this journey?
That's a hard question to answer. When I think of, going way back to when we started talking about selling the church, I wish I knew everything that had to happen at the different levels, and not doing things out of order. But that's just me. That would have been helpful for me to say, oh, this is what this person does, or it needs to do this first before it can go on there. And so I learned that there are a lot of things that happen before you can make a decision. And so it would have been nice to know all of that up front, but I do know that's a lot of information to take in also. But I really think it's been a good process. We've learned a lot along the way about different people, about different processes. And I'm not sure I can pinpoint anything else that I wish I knew ahead of time.
Susan, anything for you?
Well, I think we've been able to see the power of working together. And, it really has made a difference. And we've, tried to bring in everybody's strengths. And we can now use that as a springboard for what comes next.
Yeah. Pam.
Well, I certainly agree with what both Beth and Susan have said. I don't know. You don't know what you don't know when you don't know it. And so looking back, maybe I wish that I had known that on my part, I had been more attentive to how I could have been, I guess, aware of what some of the needs were when people were trying to make hard decisions without sharing it with other people, feeling like they had to carry a lot of it by themselves. And so, I guess I wish that I had been in a place maybe that I had been more in tune with that. But I also think, it's so easy to think that what we see right now is the only path. And that if we don't see a way out of that, there's not a way to anything. And, that's that tough. We had some very, very tough conversations, but so worth it.
So I have one more question for you that's kind of a big question as far as the big questions for today. What are your hopes for Community of Christ? Who wants to go first on that one?
Well, I think we've come as a church a long ways from when I attended church in Oklahoma City growing up. And I think the addition in our thought process of the mission initiatives and the enduring principles are just full of good things that we can try to help with. I know finances are always going to be difficult, and the people at headquarters and at the top jobs, we need to keep them in our thoughts and prayers, because none of it, no change is easy. And so I hope we can continue to offer things, showing peaceful ways to take care of things and support one another, not just in a small building on 29th Street, but going on to the Mission Center and the World Church.
Thanks, Susan. Beth?
I appreciate that our church is forward thinking, and they're not afraid to stand up for the marginalized. Things have changed. Our cultures have changed, and I know what, some of the things in the Bible were good back in the day, and I really like that we have the continuing revelations, and that our church recognizes that we are moving with God in a direction to include everybody. And how that looks, again, a lot of prayer for those folks making those hard decisions. But I hope we keep moving in that direction.
Yeah.
whatever the change might be.
How about you, Pam?
Well, I just have such hope for, I'm excited about the energy that we feel from the leadership. And I've always just respected so much our world church, like the people that have given so much to support us and are so accessible to us. That has made being a member of Community Christ so tangible, and we feel that we are part of community, not just a member of an organization, but we are community. And so one of the hopes I have for Community of Christ is that we can continue in this new energy and see ourselves really differently, and that some younger people who are vulnerable or are searching might see a glimpse of a very manageable faith movement for them that allows them to be searchers, but also that gives them a place to be who they are, and that they don't feel maybe pushed aside by maybe prior beliefs that some of us that are older struggle with to decide what we understand about how the world is changing. And so I just have such hope for us to have conversations that allow a vision for communication and just a place to grow.
Thank you. I like to give space because sometimes we think of something else that we want to talk about. So is there anything else that you would like to share today that I haven't already asked you about, or something you thought of that you wish you'd included?
I can't think of any.
No? All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Susan and Beth and Pam. It's been a joy to hear about your journey, and it's an inspiring story, and we can see the Holy Spirit at work, not only from the beginning of your journey now in this discernment process, but just kindled with a new fire of excitement and sense of call and deep commitment to a faithful response. So thank you so much, all of you.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, thank you.
As always, a very special thanks to you, our listeners, for spending a portion of your day with us. If you'd like to hear more stories about mission, check out our What's Brewing series on Faith Unfiltered podcast.org. This is your host, Robin Linkhart, and you are listening to Faith Unfiltered. Go out and make the world a better place. Take good care. Bye-bye.